Handicapped, skiing is a healthy and challenging sport, a vigorous physical activity that a handicapper can learn faster than the physically normal person. It is a sport that is limited only by desire and state of mind. One person who teaches downhill skiing to amputees is Jan Stakosa, director of the nonprofit Institute for the Advancement of Prosthetics in Lansing, Michigan. The Institute is the only facility in the United States which has been designed exclusively for the treatment of birth defect victims and amputees who require artificial limbs.
Our philosophy is treating the whole person, not just simply replacing a lost extremity. There are many different people with different personalities, with different needs. There are people that want to be physically active, and there are people that need not be physically active. They require different artificial limbs.
Ex-legislator Bill Barr of Illinois is the founder and president of the Institute. The victim of an intentional car bombing in 1970, Barr's right leg was amputated above the knee. After searching 6 years to find a functional and comfortable artificial limb, Stakosa was the only individual who was able to alleviate the pain.
To be an auto mechanic today, you have to have a license, a plumber and electrician. To be a prosthetist, or a person who makes artificial limbs, you don't have to have a license. You don't have to have any qualification at all. You could, in fact, you could go out and put up a little sign and say that you're a prosthetist, you make artificial limbs. So we are pushing to have control. Many people don't want control. I think, and we think here at the Institute, that prosthetists should be licensed by the state.
Prosthetics is an art, and there are roughly 24 procedures in making an artificial limb for an amputee. The first one is the first visit evaluation.
That is where we do a complete evaluation of the individual's physical characteristics and mental characteristics. After the evaluation, we do the impression cast procedure. The first thing we do is put on a parting agent over the skin so the plaster doesn't stick. We then put a nylon sock over that with elastic holdings. Then with an indelible pencil, we mark the bone areas that could be problem areas of pain. Any area that can take a lot of pressure, we also outline. We then take a special plaster that has rubber bands going through it, that is very elastic, that will conform to the different contours of every person's extremity. We wrap this around the leg with a great deal of compression to compress the tissues, to push on the tissues to simulate the pressure that this person would be under when he's walking. When the plaster hardens, we then are able to slip the cast off the person's leg. We now have a hollow cast. This is now poured with liquid plaster. When the liquid plaster hardens, we take off the outer layers, and we now have an exact replica of the person's leg. The prosthetist now removes plaster, takes plaster away where we want pressure, and puts more plaster to relieve areas that are sensitive. Once that's complete, we're now ready for the test interface, the test socket. We use a clear plastic material. It's glass clear. The plastic is heated so it's soft, put over the mold, and then a vacuum is introduced, and this plastic shrinks around the mold. When that cools and hardens, we then take that off the mold. That's removed from the mold, and the edges are trimmed so that they're not sharp. Now we're ready to attach the alignment fixture and the artificial foot. At this point, we're now ready to see the patient again, to have him walk. As he stands on this prosthesis, we're able to look through the plastic to see any areas that may have too much pressure. We continue to make modifications or changes to this clear plastic one until we have reached a satisfying fit where everything is reasonably comfortable. Once that is complete, then we're ready for the final plastic interface that is part of the person's finished artificial limb. We attempt to make this artificial limb look as natural as possible. It's very difficult, and through talking with other amputees, they have mixed emotions about whether it looks exactly like it, somewhat like it, but I think for the most part it looks pretty close to their other leg.
Besides making artificial legs, Stokosa also makes artificial hands. Gaylord Acker lost his right arm following an industrial accident in 1953. Stokosa fitted him with a bionic or myoelectric arm, which has two functions, to open and to close.
Basically, it works by flexing a muscle onto the sensor here. The sensor picks up the impulse, sends it to a motor, and the hand opens. Then by flexing the muscle under this sensor, it closes it.
If you're thinking the greater percentage of the time during the day that you're an amputee, if you're thinking if something is painful, your conscious mind is being taken up with that. If we can remove that to the point where that's not the major factor in the person's life, then we can put that person back into the quality of life or nearing the quality of life that they were living prior to the surgery. And that's what we're trying to do.
Bill Barr is a former Illinois legislator, a millionaire real estate developer. 10 years ago, his right leg was blown off in an explosion. It was not an accident. And then a few years later, his son Tony lost his foot in a railroad accident. Fortunately, they met a pioneering genius in prosthetics, artificial limbs, and they are now, as they would put it, whole again. Whole Again is the title of a book about Bill and Tony by Lee Whipple. Good morning. The story about how you got yourself in trouble would be good enough for a long conversation, but as briefly as possible, Bill, what happened to the two of you?
Well, in my case, Jane, I started my car on the morning of June 2nd, 1970, and it had been professionally dynamited, and I was blown up in the automobile. In the case of Tony, a train hit him in a small town on the eastern coast of Florida.
You're a millionaire several times over. You can afford the best medical care money can buy, and you found it not good enough.
Yes, I went all over the country and would have gone all over the world seeking proper surgery and the proper making of an artificial limb to afford me maximum mobility free of pain, and searched for many, many years without success.
The pain, tell me about it.
Well, pain in most amputees is unbearable, Jane. It's much like a tourniquet because of lack of circulation due to improper surgery, and also due to the improper making of an artificial limb. If you have total contact, it restores the circulation and removes the terrible tourniquet sensation, which is much like a Chinese torture test. It gets to you.
Tony, between the two of you, between you and your father, how many operations, how many artificial limbs?
Well, Jane, I would say we had, between the two of us, 17 artificial limbs or prosthetic devices. I had myself 12 operations, and I'm including the first prosthetic device, which would have been newspaper.
The conclusion that you drew then is that doctors don't know what to do about amputees. Once they get you out of surgery, then what? Is that?
Well, one, Jane, the surgery is improper, even though there is a definite prescribed medical procedure known as the Erdl procedure for proper amputation surgery, preparing the stump for the subsequent weight-bearing artificial limb. That, coupled with the inadequate training of people who make artificial limbs, known as prosthetists, makes it a double bubble so that the amputee ends up being suffering the rest of their life.
So the doctors get years of training in medicine, but not in how to perform the proper surgery, and the prosthetist?
Prosthetist.
What kind of training?
2 years of junior college in any subject whatsoever, and 9 weeks of training to become a prosthetist, which requires the education to become a qualified physician if done properly.
After 10 years, you found a good one, though.
After about 7 years.
7 years.
And no licensure laws for any prosthetist in any state in the United States. You have to have a license to be a beautician or a barber.
They found a guy who was so good. We're going to show you some film of Tony, who, remember, lost his foot in a railroad accident, taking up his favorite sport.
Jane, this is over Eustis, Florida. I'm exiting aircraft Twin Beach. That's Larry Church behind me. Coming in on Mike Cicerelli out of Sky Supplies into land. He's the base man. I'm now pinning him. You'll see another third jumper come out.
The point is, you landed on both feet.
That's correct.
And you continue to do this, and you will go skydiving again on Thursday. Is there any prosthetic device other than the one you got in Lansing?
I had tried several of the others before, and to no avail. I was quite a bit in pain after each jump.
The reason that there is a place in Michigan where such work is being done is because you founded it.
Yes, after I found the genius of this man who had years of training, Jan Stakosa.
Yes.
I volunteered and contributed about $1 million to build an institute for the advancement of prosthetics, the goals of which are to properly train prosthetists so that other amputees can be free of pain, to do research, and to raise the level of this profession.
Let's get the story summed up. You walked in here without crutches.
Yes, I'm 60 years old. I have no cane. I'm an above-knee amputee. I have proprioception, and I can raise my toes. They're not there. I've told my wife, Doina, she should buy me a nail clipper for Christmas. It's a memory bank. It's an extension of my former limb. I don't consider it artificial.
We congratulate the both of you, and my advice, sir, is don't you go skydiving, too.
Thank you,
Enough is enough. We'll be back in a moment. First, a station break.
Presenting tonight on Channel 7 typify the holiday season, a time that we must be thankful for all the good things that have happened to us throughout the year. And we have a very special Christmas story that our news hawk, Jerry Stanicky, has been working on for some time now. Jerry tells me that it is a very touching story, a very real story, and one that we can all learn from.
Yes, Doris, it is something that our children can watch and really enjoy. It is at times very unfortunate that human nature usually means hindsight is better than foresight. Why, I'll bet almost every parent in the world has said to their children, think, use your head before you do something dumb, before you do something costly. But to err is human. For some, it is a slight discomfort. For others, a mistake can be costly. This is a story of courage, of strength, determination, and desire. A young man came to me for help. He had the desire to help others despite his problem. All he needed was to be shown the way. This is his and your story. It is a very special Christmas story.
It was Christmas. We wanted to get to another town, and we just seen the train and thought that was the easy way. Really never thought about, all your wind and everything underneath it, and we just were running up side of it and went to jump on it, and the train sucked me underneath it. My friend pulled me out.
His friend had saved his life, true, but Bob Monier's leg stayed in that train yard. He'd made a mistake, a costly mistake. He was now an amputee. It was last summer when Bob wrote me asking for help. He had tried skiing once with one leg at Mount Brighton. Fell a lot, but loved the challenge. When he tried to pursue it, he ran into a brick wall. There was no handicap ski equipment for rent in the area. In fact, most people didn't have any idea what he was talking about. Could I find someone to donate old or repaired handicap equipment? Here, I thought, was a determined young man, especially when I looked at the cartoon he enclosed in the letter. Two one-legged skiers passing a tree. The normal, or normie, as amputees call them, was heading for trouble. But there's more to Bob's story. Bob wanted to help others, he said, but he didn't know how. I would handle that. The day I told Bob that a lot of good people had gotten together to help him, his reaction was emotional.
What can I say? Oh, man.
We'll do it together, all right?
I could do it. No, I could. At least I'd give it a damn good try.
As it happens so much of the time when I ask people to help other people, there is never a moment of hesitation. It's, let's do it. First stop, Schneider's Sports Store in Fairlane Manor. There, operations manager Bob Hoffman was waiting to outfit Bob with what he'd need. Ski, ski boot, and those all-important flip ski outriggers. Right down to the entire ski outfit. In addition, owner Ray Schneider paid for half of Bob's airfare. The plane would take us to the Upper Peninsula, where Bob's challenge and goal, the mountain, waited. Outside Iron Mountain at the Pine Mountain Lodge, owner Laverne Trepp was waiting. Laverne not only paid the other half of Bob's airfare, but opened all facilities at the lodge to us. The team was indeed coming together. An expert on amputee instruction joined us, Jan Stakosa. It was Jan's experience, patience, and compassion I counted on to take Bob through the basics, and not only to the top of the mountain, but down it. The basics. Oh, the basics. 14 steps in all. Walking with the outriggers, hop turns, sidestepping, not to forget the all-important knowing how to stop.
You know, you can't sit home and cry about something that's gone. You gotta think about what's gonna happen to the rest of your life. You can't put it in a closet, you know?
A lot of people do. A lot of people do.
That's wrong. They shouldn't. You know, can't have a good time in life just because you're crippled, you know, or no, not crippled, but just because you're loss of a leg or loss of an arm doesn't mean it's a loss of life.
It's a lot easier to take the chair. Good, good. Okay, let's go. Let's go just traversing.
As Jan and Bob began to work, the rest of the team arrived. From Cleveland, the granddaddy of amputee skiing, Paul Limeculer, came. He'd given up a week's vacation in the Florida sunshine to join us to help Bob. And Bill Steeler, author of the book Kick the Handicap, Learn to Ski, was there. I watched and smiled and thought, at least 30 years separate these two men from young Bob, but the common bond was here. The unselfish desire to help others.
There's strength everywhere, you know? You just gotta go looking for it. Like some people, I guess, just put themselves in a corner and don't want to come out after something like this happens. And, you know, if you do get out, you can find that there's people everywhere that want to help you.
People helping people.
You know? I mean, there's people out there that, you know, really would like to help you, you know? And I guess I found some of them people.
The morning turned to afternoon, and we worked. Boy, did we work. Several times, Jan mentioned Bob's great attitude and determination, but the going was slow. Even the chairlift was running slow on the first trip to the top of the intermediate hill. 3/4 of a mile long with an incline difficult for a lot of two-legged skiers. Then it was time for the first run. Jan, Bob, and myself were psyched up.
First time, it was a little bit scary there, you know? I mean, well, it was a little bit scary, I guess, you know, sitting up there and saying, boy, pretty steep, you know. But I figured I could handle it, you know. I just fall, and the worst thing I can do is fall a couple times, just get back up.
Okay, when you want to stop quick, you have to really dig those...
It wasn't Bob's first fall, and it wouldn't be his last. And Bob wasn't alone in the up and down department. Several times I wondered, maybe it is easier to ski with just one leg. Despite the ups and the downs, progress came. Like a school teacher, Jan had Bob doing it again. And again. And again, until it was done right. Progress came, yes, but it was still only in the shadow of the mountain Bob had to conquer. The hours on the slope became days. Tirelessly we worked, and it was coming together. And when night fell, it was time for talk. Bob and I gathered around the fire, the room charged with emotion. The next day would be the test. As Bob and I talked, his courage and strength came out. His concern for other amputees and the strength they'd need, especially the younger ones, was evident when he talked of parents.
It's the parents that cripple the children. It's not the children, you know. If they had stronger, if they had, like, their parents came up to them and didn't baby them and didn't sympathize so much, they might not be as crippled, you know, because they get crippled in their minds. You know, if you come out as a strong person and say, hey, you know, you can do it, well, then they're going to want to get up out of that bed as soon as they can. They're going to want to do it.
Gonna do it. The pure desire to succeed. There was no question Bob had it. But could he put all that he'd learned these few days together and conquer the mountain? Bob felt he would be skiing down the mountain not only for himself, but for all handicapped people. It was that moment, that night, by the fire, that all doubt I had left me. He'd make it.
I'm not handicapped. I got a little inconvenience, a little bit of hassle every now and then, but you learn to live with it and do the best you can with it.
And then it was time. It was bitter cold, but the chills I felt as I watched from the bottom of the mountain were not from the wind.
I did it.
Well, you didn't think you could?
I knew I could. I mean, I want to live just like everybody else. I don't want to live with everybody, you know, around me feeling sorry for me. That's not going to do me any good.
A courageous young man. A true story. And without a lot of help from a lot of people, I could have never told it. I thank those people. And I have good news, because Bob now plans to continue with his work with Jan Stakosa. He is going to help teach other handicapped. Strike that word. He's going to help teach other inconvenienced people. People helping each other. It is a philosophy of mine, and together, anything can be conquered.
keep Christmas all year round. Merry Christmas to all of you.
Prosthetics is the making of artificial limbs, and Lansing is the home of the only prosthetic facility in the country designed specifically to meet the needs of amputees. It's the Institute for the Advancement of Prosthetics, and its director, Jan Stakosa, has been called a prosthetic genius.
When I was 7 years old, my father began my training, education and training in the field of prosthetics. And that's all that I've really done as far as work and interest. By the time I was in high school, I began fitting amputees with artificial limbs, and I carried through to college and eventually where I am today.
The Institute is dedicated in memory of Jan's father, Walter Stakosa, who died 10 years ago. But what was it that motivated Jan to learn the skills of his father's profession?
Fear. He was a harsh taskmaster, and my responsibility was to help him in work. He was a prosthetist, and I would assist him summers and after school, and I had no other choice.
This bronze plaque hangs in the waiting room of the Institute, a waiting room which is usually filled with hopeful amputees from all over the country.
Most of the people we have been seeing lately have been people who have had the amputation for a number of years and have been wearing artificial limbs and have had problems with them.
This was Pastor Cameron Hoff's first visit to the Institute for the Advancement of Prosthetics. His foot had to be amputated 3 years ago when a diabetic condition was the cause of poor circulation in his leg.
I'm a diabetic, and because of the impaired circulation that goes with it oftentimes, this is the loss of extremities and the loss of eyesight are the two most obvious things that happen to diabetics.
Pastor Hoff came all the way from Santa Monica, California to see Jan Stakosa. Since his amputation 3 years ago, he has been unhappy with the artificial limbs provided by other prosthetists.
Do you have any sensitive areas that are extremely sensitive?
Right here and down here. Now, the thing that I think is happening, I think the prosthesis is working like this, because my leg is starting to move in that direction. And you see this bulge here is moving out here, and I'm getting a callus down there, which is on the side.
So the first visit is an evaluation to assess what their current status is, and it's a very time-consuming procedure. To take into account many variables, one being their overall medical and physical well-being, as well as their mental attitudes. We're looking for a visual perceptive map of the person's ability to accept pressure through weight bearing. When you and I walk on 2 feet, the weight is being borne through the skeletal system, through the bones, by way of the foot. When the foot is amputated, now we no longer have that normal mechanism, and the replacement artificial limb must push from the outside to support body weight going down. And the body is not used to having these pressures outside from skin, through the tissue, muscle, and on arteries and nerves and veins. And so when we're examining a person's amputation stump, we're actually palpating and getting verbal response, or from physical response where they jerk away. It's a sensitive area. Then we define that area, and we make the necessary corrections to relieve or to reduce the pressure. Apply pressure only as much as that area can tolerate, as well as not restricting any physiological functioning. So.
After hours of x-rays, measuring tape, and pencil marks, Jan and his intern Charlie Quibman prepare to make an impression cast of Pastor Hoff's stump. Again, a great deal of time is spent with this procedure.
The cast impression, the purpose of that is to achieve a mold replica of the person's amputation stump, because that mold replica will be used to fabricate the artificial limb, the plastic part, the socket that is actually going to be fit. So we have to first make an impression cast that, as well as we can, duplicates duplicates their amputation stump. Many times we have to redo this procedure 2, 3, 4 times.
After the plaster hardens, the cast is removed and taken downstairs to the lab.
This is the laboratory of the Prosthetics Institute. It's an artificial limb workshop where materials are individually molded into the arms and legs that will replace those lost by Jan Stakosa's patients.
A technician fills the hollow shell with plaster, which hardens into an exact representation of the patient's stump. This plaster look-alike is then prepared and readied for the next step, the making of the crucial test socket.
The plastic that we use for the test fittings is a clear plastic, and it's in a sheet form, and then it's heated until it's soft, and then it's made into an envelope, and then that's pulled over the mold. The top edge of that is sealed, and a vacuum extracts the air from within, between the plastic and the mold, and the plastic just collapses over the mold, and we have an exact replica of the mold. So the procedure of the test socket fabrication, once the plastic hardens, then we can pull it off, and then we prepare that, prepare the edges so that we take the sharpness away, sand them and buff them, and then we're ready to fit the test socket to the person. The method used up until we found this clear plastic was you took a cast impression, and then you fit them with the final socket, and you couldn't see through it. And the clear plastic enables us to see through the plastic and observe the skin reaction to pressure, and to assure that the pressure is indeed where it can be tolerated and not over an area where it can't be tolerated. And right now, visually, you can look through it and you can see where the pressures are concentrated. The skin becomes very white, blanched in appearance, and around it, the skin tends to be pink, sometimes even red, depending on how much pressure is applied to it. We use multiple test sockets. I think we're averaging about 5 now, 5 or 6 per patient. About half of them, 3 or 4 of them, are done standing still. There's a static testing where they're just standing. Once we get comfort in the standing position, we then attach the foot, ankle, and an alignment fixture, and we test it walking. And then 2 or 3 more are made after that.
When a test socket which provides the patient with the greatest amount of comfort is achieved, the laboratory technicians work to align the socket with a foot.
The alignment now of the socket, the test socket, and the shoe with the artificial foot in it, and an ankle, and an alignment coupling with a tube connection, which is like a shim, to connect the 2 couplings. That apparatus will allow 16 different angle adjustments to be made while they're walking.
And walking, they do. At 70 years old, Everett Wells of Jackson has been seeing Stakosa for 18 years, since he had 2 below-the-knee amputations due to hardening of the arteries.
I take care of all my personal needs and take care of my dog and feed my birds and get up and downstairs and like that. I do most anything anybody else.
And Doug Larner of Lansing.
I can do a lot of things. I can swim, run, play any kind of sport at all. And I can, roller skate and things like that.
And Connie Garner of Lansing.
I'm living a normal life, a better life, because I'm not in a lot of pain.
But prosthetics is a profession that is not free from controversy, and Jan Stokosa and the Institute for the Advancement of Prosthetics is right in the middle of it. The problems in the prosthetic industry began to surface when millionaire Congressman Bill Barr of Illinois lost a leg in an explosion in 1970. Barr spent 6 years jumping from one prosthetist to another, and he claims that none of them were able to provide him with a pain-free prosthesis. No one, that is, until he met up with Jan Stokosa. Barr now lives a normal and active life with his Stokosa leg, and to show his appreciation and concern for the artificial limb industry, he put up $500,000 to establish the Institute for the Advancement of Prosthetics and named Jan Stokosa its director.
Do you think that what you're doing here is that much different than what other prosthetists
Yes,
do?
very definitely. My travels throughout the country, and I've been on lecture programs. I've been lecturing. The attitude is much different. In fact, it's probably 180 degrees. Maybe it's 170 degrees from what we're doing. The attitude tends to be more towards a centralized, central fabrication of components and artificial limbs where you have small, medium, large. That has been going on for 15 years. They've been attempting to get to that point so that they can cut the cost down. Unfortunately, in my opinion, that's going backwards.
What are you saying? They're not fitting individual prosthetic devices?
Yeah, we have a small size and a medium size and a large size, and maybe, it's not that simple. There are more sizes, but each individual, there is not an impression cast taken, and it's not fit that intimately. It's just close enough.
Wright & Philippus is the only other prosthetic firm in Lansing. They claim to be the largest manufacturer of prosthetic devices in the Midwest.
Ken Woodward is the prosthetist here, and I asked him about the differences in the two prosthetic facilities.
No, I don't see where there's that much difference between what the Institute for the Advancement of Prosthetics is doing versus what we are doing. I think that we have a high level of success. Myself, personally, I'm very well satisfied with the service that I am able to provide for my patients, and I feel that I am able to do that in the environment that I'm in.
The methods used at Wright & Philippus are similar to those used at the Institute for the Advancement of Prosthetics. Impression casts of the amputee stumps are made, plaster molds are made from the cast shell, and there is one test socket used to make necessary adjustments before making the final limb. The difference lies in the amount of time that the prosthetists take to be sure their patient has the best possible fit. But time is money.
When we talk about money, we're talking about usually the higher the level of the amputation, the more monies that are going to be involved. For an abalone amputee, I would say in our facility that could cost anywhere from $1,500 to maybe $2,500. An above-knee amputee, this could range anywhere from about $2,000 to $3,000.
Costs are probably $4,500 to as much as $10,000, depending on the level. It's about 3 to 5 times more, which is relative to the amount of time that's expended. We put about 3 to 5 more times the time per patient than most other prosthetists in the country.
But because those who are paying most bills for prosthetic services are insurance companies, the Veterans Administration, and other government agencies, they're not always willing to pay the higher price. This is an issue that concerns Congressman Jim Dunn, who sits on the Veterans Affairs Committee.
They have methods that they've employed in their hospitals for a number of years now, and they're simply unwilling to take a look at some of the new techniques and new procedures.
Why is that?
Part of the reason the new techniques and new procedures are more expensive, and the VA has very finite guidelines that they go into, and if your costs don't fit into those guidelines, then they simply won't accept you. My attitude would be, if a physician is doing a credible job for people and if people are impressed with what he's doing, then even if the VA is unwilling to fund beyond what would normally be the charge, they should at least fund up to the normal amount. I've had several veterans who went to Jan, one of them on my staff there in Washington, and the figure he gave me was that Jan was about 3 times higher than normal, but it was the first decent leg he's had since 1972. So exactly what you say, my personal experience would lead me to believe that people like Jan should have at least an opportunity to attract these veterans and help solve some of their problems.
They have refused to pay fees, and a letter here right now is simply from the director of prosthetic and sensory aids of the Veterans Administration, says we don't, we will not, we understand what you're doing, and we're going to come to your facility and spend some time and in hopes of developing some programming within the VA similar to yours if we feel that it's worthwhile.
But money is not the only issue in the area of prosthetics that concerns Jan Stakosa.
I think there are 2 basic problems. One is there's a manpower shortage. That is well documented in studies. One that's soon to be out, but 2 previous studies over the last 10 years that clearly state that there's a dire manpower shortage. The second part of the problem that is facing prosthetics in this country is the fact that quality of treatment is very low. Educational standards and training standards have gone down. There is no structured training program required after graduating from the university.
To become a certified prosthetist, a person need only have an associate degree in any discipline, 9 weeks of specialized training, and 2 years of general experience in the field of prosthetics.
I think it's too little, and the fact that it's too little is the minor part of the problem. The major part is that there is no structured requirement for fitting experience under supervised, qualified prosthetists.
Congressman Jim Dunn has called for hearings this fall to investigate the artificial limb industry nationwide. The amputees here at the Institute for the Advancement of Prosthetics are very satisfied and would just like to continue receiving these services.
I can walk without cane or crutches, which I could not do before. In fact, I have even gotten back to dancing, which for a long time I never thought I could.
You've taken time with me, and I think that's the right thing to do whenever you have something that you care for and can't keep. And I care for my legs, but they wasn't doing me no good, but these are.
Lee puts in a lot of different things, like seeing, like making the foot look like it's, real, like a real leg, and before, just like at Ann Arbor, they'd have, just wood, thin, and they wouldn't put any body into it.
He does spend a lot of time with his patients, and when they go out, they walk out anyway, and that's the main thing.
Our next guest, a liberal, millionaire, legislator in Illinois, frantically working on the election of the mayor in Joliet, Illinois. And when in the late spring in 1970, 5 sticks of dynamite exploded beneath William Barr's Cadillac as he turned the ignition. Miraculously, he survived, but he lost a leg. After a 10-year ordeal of pain and frustration, he's finally whole again. And here from Joliet, Illinois, is businessman and former legislator Bill Barr. Nice to have you. That's a shattering experience. By the way, what blew up your car? Was this organized crime?
It's never been proven, Pat, actually. At the time, I was very busily engaged in the legislature in trying to enact fair housing legislation. And there had been some crosses burned in my yard prior to that time, so...
it may have been the Klan then, do you think, or that type of extremism?
There is a possibility, the strong possibility that was a situation. It was certainly an experience that brings you close to God, that's for sure.
You turned the ignition, turned the key. The minute you hit that thing, a ball of fire went off. What went through your mind? Were you just knocked unconscious immediately?
Well, no. It was, I best compare it to a volcano going up. It's very interesting, Pat. Since I've been 16, I'm 60 now, I never started a car with the door closed. This is 45 years before. This is what saved my life, being blown out of the car door. If the door had been closed, or if it had been a car where you had to fasten the seatbelt before it would start, I would have been dead. It was a professional job in terms of wiring the 5 sticks of dynamite. Blew the car to smithereens, and as I went up and was thrown about 150 feet onto a parking lot, I was still conscious. Shortly after that, I can remember someone holding me, and then I passed out, of course.
Your leg was completely shattered. Actually, was it blown off in the explosion?
Yes, I'm told above the knee, about here. Just nothing but a few fragments of skin and bone. Also, both eardrums blown out, 160 or so stitches in my face. It was a terrifying experience, to say the least.
Well, now, the terrifying thing is what happened, but what happened to you subsequently is the great thing. You look terrific. I don't see the marks of all those stitches in your face. They did a tremendous job.
Well, the real terrifying area, Pat, as you say, was the unbelievable experience that I had after this. I was in the middle of a mayoral campaign, as you pointed out. I came through the hospital and got an artificial limb and was told that I did it in record time. But as this campaign and after the campaign went on, the excruciating pain that I was getting into my stump, much like a tourniquet constantly around your stump, led me to believe that there must be some better answer. A serious attempted suicide, spending 18 hours a day in bed, which I've subsequently found thousands of fellow amputees have the same experience, due to 2 things, Pat. Number one, a prosthetist, that's the person who makes artificial limbs, has very minimal training, 9 weeks, graduates from a place like Northwestern called a certified prosthetist, and surgeons are taught absolutely nothing, no type of surgeon, in any medical school, in internship or graduate school, about proper amputation surgery as it relates to the subsequent weight-bearing artificial limb. So the vacuum that exists both in the medical profession and in the profession of making artificial limbs is truly unbelievable.
Well, they have what they call, or you had what you call phantom pain. You feel pain in where the leg used to be, don't you? But it's not. Well, it's not really there.
A phantom pain, Pat, is can be a terrifying sensation where, for example, your brain believes that your toes are either down or up and you can't move them. That's a phantom pain. Now, with a properly fitting artificial limb, I have what is known as proprioception. Right now, I'm raising and lowering my toes. I told my wife she'd buy me a nail clipper for Christmas. I can tell whether I'm on a carpet. I don't have a cane. I don't have a belt. I can do practically anything that anyone else can do.
So that you really are feeling something down in that extremity that doesn't exist?
The total contact of the socket around the artificial limb is so complete that it's regenerated the memory of those nerves, transmitting into your brain. It's called proprioception.
Proprioception? That is marvelous.
It really, I call it an extension of my limb. I don't call it an artificial.
So you aren't just dragging along an appendage that doesn't belong to you. This thing has actually become a part of your very being.
It's become a part of me. My ankle moves just like my real ankle, sideways and up and down. I can walk down a ramp without going down sideways. Yeah. But the most important thing to my brother and sister amputees, that we can understand this, is the lack of pain. Not just when you have the limb on, but when you have it off. And the mobility, which is the most meaningful thing in the world to any amputee.
Would you mind just walking around here? You know,
you see this leg, I can walk right down the step.
You're walking?
And see, I can turn the foot. See, the foot turns just like your ankle, so that, and it automatically triggers. The foot's right out under you. And if you will examine it, I'm above the knee. Now,
above the knee?
Below the knee, you can't tell an amputee at all.
Well, that stiffness is because you don't have that flexibility of having a knee socket.
That's correct. Yeah. But there is, when this is triggered, it automatically comes under your foot so that you're not worrying about is that foot going to be there so that you fall down.
And now you can feel that foot. I mean, you're on
I can feel, I can tell I'm on carpet or on the tile, and right now I'm raising and lowering my toes. That's called proprioception.
That's marvelous. We've got a film clip, by the way, that shows some of the modern work in prosthetics that is nothing short of miraculous, and let's go to that right now.
New to the physically handicapped, skiing is a healthy and challenging sport, a vigorous physical activity that a handicapper can learn faster than the physically normal person. It is a sport that is limited only by desire and state of mind. One person who teaches downhill skiing to amputees is Jan Stakosa, director of the nonprofit Institute for the Advancement of Prosthetics in Lansing, Michigan. The Institute is the only facility in the United States which has been designed exclusively for the treatment of birth defect victims and amputees who require artificial limbs.
Our philosophy is treating the whole person, not just simply replacing a lost extremity. There are many different people with different personalities, with different needs. There are people that want to be physically active, and there are people that need not be physically active. They require different artificial limbs.
Ex-legislator Bill Barr of Illinois is the founder and president of the Institute. The victim of an intentional car bombing in 1970, Barr's right leg was amputated above the knee. After searching 6 years to find a functional and comfortable artificial limb, Stakosa was the only individual who was able to alleviate the pain.
To be an auto mechanic today, you have to have a license, a plumber, and electrician. To be a prosthetist, or a person who makes artificial limbs, you don't have to have a license. You don't have to have any qualification at all. You could, in fact, you could go out and put up a little sign and say that you're a prosthetist, you make artificial limbs. So we are pushing to have control. Many people don't want control. I think, and we think here at the Institute, that prosthetists should be licensed by the state.
Prosthetics is an art, and there are roughly 24 procedures in making an artificial limb for an amputee. The first one is the first visit evaluation.
That is where we do a complete evaluation of the individual's physical characteristics and mental characteristics. After the evaluation, we do the impression cast procedure. The first thing we do is put on a parting agent over the skin so the plaster doesn't stick. We then put a nylon sock over that with elastic holdings. Then with an indelible pencil, we mark the bone areas that could be problem areas of pain. Any area that can take a lot of pressure, we also outline. We then take a special plaster that has rubber bands going through it, that is very elastic, that will conform to the different contours of every person's extremity. We wrap this around the leg with a great deal of compression to compress the tissues, to push on the tissues, to simulate the pressure that this person would be under when he's walking. When the plaster hardens, we then are able to slip the cast off the person's leg. We now have a hollow cast. This is now poured with liquid plaster. When the liquid plaster hardens, we take off the outer layers, and we now have an exact replica of the person's leg. The prosthetist now removes plaster, takes plaster away where we want pressure, and puts more plaster to relieve areas that are sensitive. Once that's complete, we're now ready for the test interface, the test socket. We use a clear plastic material. It's glass clear. The plastic is heated so it's soft, put over the mold, and then a vacuum is introduced, and this plastic shrinks around the mold. When that cools and hardens, we then take that off the mold. That's removed from the mold, and the edges are trimmed so that they're not sharp. Now we're ready to attach the alignment fixture and the artificial foot. At this point, we're now ready to see the patient again, to have him walk. As he stands on this prosthesis, we're able to look through the plastic to see any areas that may have too much pressure. We continue to make modifications or changes to this clear plastic one until we have reached a satisfying fit where everything is reasonably comfortable. Once that is complete, then we're ready for the final plastic interface that is part of the person's finished artificial limb. We attempt to make this artificial limb look as natural as possible. It's very difficult, and through talking with other amputees, they have mixed emotions about whether it looks exactly like it, somewhat like it, but I think for the most part it looks pretty close to their other leg.
Besides making artificial legs, Stokosa also makes artificial hands. Gaylord Acker lost his right arm following an industrial accident in 1953. Stokosa fitted him with a bionic or myoelectric arm, which has two functions, to open and to close.
Basically, it works by flexing a muscle under the sensor here. The sensor picks up the impulse, sends it to a motor, and the hand opens. Then by flexing the muscle under this sensor, it closes it.
If you're thinking the greater percentage of the time during the day that you're an amputee, if you're thinking if something is painful, your conscious mind is being taken up with that. If we can remove that to the point where that's not the major factor in the person's life, then we can put that person back into the quality of life or nearing the quality of life that they were living prior to the surgery. And that's what we're trying to do.
You know, I hate to say that young man, 34 years old, it just looks like an ordinary human being, but he happens to be the leading genius in this field in the world. Is that right?
It's difficult, Pat, to make anyone believe this, but more and more people in the, not only the amputee, but people in the medical profession are now becoming increasingly convinced, only because he had 20 years of internship under an unbelievable genius taskmaster, his father.
I understand his father was so rigorous that this young man missed a class, a biology, anatomy class?
Anatomy class. At 9 years of age, Stokosa missed his father's set time anatomy class for his son.
Oh.
He was late. His father, as punishment, beat his dog to death.
Beat his dog to death? The little boy's dog, because he was late for a 9 o'clock in the morning class?
Right.
At 9 years old?
At 9 years old.
Hi.
9 years old. He had a great, there are all sorts of similar situations in the area of discipline. And after the father died in 1970, experimenting with plastics and transparent sockets, which where you can see whether your artificial limb fits, he deserted the profession for about 2 years because of this built-in hatred for his father. We have a book, Whole Again, about how he got back into it, how I found him after being all over the world to leading facilities. I was very fortunate. Money was not a problem.
Yeah.
I had the stick-to-itiveness. I went to every known medical center in the world practically over this. I then, by accident, said there is a genius who was called in. I expected, Pat, some gray-haired scientist, and he walks, he's at the time a 31-year-old good-looking young man who began to do things that I had never seen in any place where 9 other artificial limbs had been built for me, all of which resulted in tremendous pain and lack of mobility. So as a result of that, I felt that because of my being helped, and I also have a son who subsequently lost a part of his limb, donated a considerable amount of money to build this institute in the hopes that this profession can become the profession it truly should be, and to educate surgeons in proper amputation surgery.
Well, we're all familiar with the men who have an empty sleeve, or those who have an empty pants leg, and those who have peg legs, wooden legs. You've got, the hook, the doctor hook with the, the hand that's a claw, and to think of liberating these people into normal, useful lives. 2 million, I understand, in this country alone.
Yes, 2 million, Pat, that are either amputees or born deformed, without a leg, a partial arm, which can be corrected with a proper prosthesis.
Fabulous. Well, I commend you. And now the Institute for the Advancement of Prosthetics, this institute is available for people if they want to contact it, or is it so crowded that people can't get in?
Unfortunately, they can contact it, but right now there's about a 2-year waiting period, and so the emphasis is training prosthetists and technicians in the hopes of opening other not-for-profit, strictly amputee outpatient clinics strategically located around the country, which we feel is the real answer in terms of bringing prosthetists into the 1980s rather than the last century where it is now.
Oh, thank the Lord for it. And I'm glad God used you for that. Now, I know the Veterans Administration is grateful. When I think of the veterans from World War II and the Korean War and Vietnam, it's just amazing what can be done for them.
Right, who are given these same type of incompetent artificial limbs. I mean, the Veterans Administration doesn't do it. They're put out into other areas.
Here's that book, by the way, Whole Again, an amputee's awesome 10-year battle against continuous pain. This is available in your bookstores, and it'll tell you a little more about what you've just been seeing right now. And I want to thank Bill Barr for being here, the tremendous work he's doing. God bless you.
Thank you, Pat.